Chaos reigns. No wait, we did that already. Well then, quick recap. Wild Magic Sorcerers Only are on a quest to cure themselves from worms in their brains and beat back a crazed cult of worm brain people, but there is no cure for the level of stupidity our heroes suffer from, especially the gnome Baldur's Gate 3 himself. They made it through Act 1 despite their best efforts to the contrary, but now it's time for them to survive the oppressive darkness of the Shadowlands with only their chaotic magic to help or harm them. Let's go see just how many lives will be ruined in the process. Having survived ordeal after ordeal throughout Act 1, our heroes have the sense to rest and recover before pressing on into the dark. No, not really. They instead shove the gnome into a nearby chasm for the fun of it. While I applaud their choice of victim, sadly, the world does need that gnome and he must be brought back. Entering into the Shadowlands is no easy feat, as the darkness that fills the land is not your average, everyday darkness.
This is advanced darkness.
Meaning without a light source, every moment spent in the Cursed Dark will cause damage followed by death, since the reverse of death followed by damage is just less effective. Which wouldn't be too bad of a curse as long as our heroes keep their torches close at hand, but it also means those that die at the Shadow's hands come back as shadow creatures to drag others into the dark, like with this group of Harpers. Because, of course that's what happens. Wouldn't it be fun without it? Funny enough, though, it's not the shadows that prove themselves particularly dangerous, but the plants of this land when they ambush the group. Now, they'd also be conquered in short order if this band of idiots didn't keep forgetting that destroying any of the veggies causes them to burst and heavily damage anyone close to them. Something that keeps slipping their mind and results in the entire group becoming fertilizer. Geniuses. The nice thing about turning back time is that an ambush only works once, and this time they're able to ambush their flora foes and take them out before proximity proves a problem. The thing is, there is always another ambush around the corner for our oblivious party to stumble into, this time by a murder of shadow crows that bring Astarion close to death. The gnome almost dies too, but that's because Gale decides the best way to save his friend is by torching him and the surrounding crows, which does work, but I doubt BG3's eyebrows appreciate it. The gnome nearly weeps with joy at the sight of a nearby inn, protected by magic from the Shadow Curse, and guarded by Harpers. Of course, now that the adventurers are here, danger continues to follow them as winged villains attack, seeking to kidnap Isabel, the cleric that's providing the magical safety. Good news! The enemy's dumb enough to stand side to side, making it easy to use AoE spells to deal with them. Bad news! Isabel happens to also be right next to them and takes quite a pummeling more at the hands of our heroes than from her would-be kidnappers. Astarion does try and make it right by healing her, but only succeeds in healing everyone else but her, which must come off as passive-aggressive. Despite these very avoidable setbacks, with a little direct healing and getting lucky enough to avoid any spontaneous combustion, Isabel barely survives her rescuers. For being a cleric with healing powers, no matter how much time passes, every time the party comes across her, she's still bloody and bruised, and BG3 feels that this is her way of guilting the party for their less than stellar heroics. He hopes killing her papa, Catherick Thorn, one of the leaders of the cult that's terrorizing everyone, such as with this attempted cleric napping, will make her forgive the group. Before leaving the inn, it is a sad surprise to stumble upon a deceased Counselor Floric. The group had saved her from fire back in Act 1, and now she's just dead. Odd, as no one around her even acknowledges her death, and this is the first time the heroes had even entered the room, nor had the attackers done this, so how she died is a real mystery. Wait. No, wait, I do know how this happened. This room is directly beneath where the fighting was, and in an unexpected mishap, Floric somehow got killed by the cloud of daggers Astarion had placed down. I didn't even know it could go through floors. They already feel bad enough, though, about hurting Isabel, so let's not tell them this information for their sake. It's better just to join up with the Harpers and ambush a Drider patrol in order to acquire their Moon Lantern, which will protect the group from the Shadow Curse. With the aid of the Harpers, this fight is a breeze, but instead of taking the Moon Lantern, they free the pixie trapped within, and she simply makes them immune to the Shadow Curse, which is an even better arrangement. No longer needing to worry about the curse, the party completely forgets about their mission to defeat Catherick, and just runs around exploring, vaporizing more aggressive plants, chucking the gnome into the abyss again, testing to see if someone would wake from a coma by performing the worst loot solo imaginable, and vaporizing an even larger group of angry plants. Which in that fight alone goes to show the fickle nature of chaos magic, where one member gets an extra action, and another member gets turned into a sheep. Coming across the creepiest doctor and his group of psycho nurses, it's surely shaping up to be quite a fight. But for some reason, others find the gnome to be very charming, which means he's able to talk the doctor into letting his nurses practice their skills on the doc himself. Honestly, I'd give them a B- performance, as sure, the patient died horribly, but now he doesn't have to worry about medical bills, so it's not the worst fate. Returning to the inn, Halsin needs assistance dispelling the shadow curse from the land, and in order to do that, he'll need to be protected for 5 rounds as he dives into a portal. The shadows encroached immediately, and the squishy sorcerers would not have survived being so heavily outnumbered if not for a surge of luck. Karlach's first use of magic missiles triggers a heavy fog over the party that the enemy is reluctant to enter into, and while it may not last long, it gives the party time to set up a stink cloud, followed by numerous AoE spells, to ensure every single move the enemy takes is heavily punished. Still, it's a good thing Halsin's return dispels the shadows in the area, because the entire team was starting to run really low on firepower and were about to be overrun. Doing this makes Halsin a proper full companion, which means it's time to destroy the elf's extreme love for all things druid and force him to become a sorcerer. BG3 only brings him along to bully a shadow kid into ending the shadow curse, which is pretty simple to do, once again, thanks to the sheer firepower these sorcerers are packing. Then Halsin is almost immediately replaced by Gale again, which makes me wonder, was it really necessary to force the druid to give up his druidic ways when he's never even brought on another mission? The gnome loves his sarcastic vampire elf, his flaming silly muscle wife, and his fun magical know-it-all. What can he say? Everyone else is just here to look pretty at camp, and maybe, just maybe, get to come out on the occasional mission that directly relates to their story. Stumbling upon a toll collector who wants all the party's gold, the gnome simply says no. And for once, an enemy respects that, simply dying so they're no longer an inconvenience to anyone. Even the gnome feels a little bad about that one, but hey, lots more gold for him, so that has a way of easing the guilt. Right after that, they run into another of these odd monsters, and while this one can likely be talked into dying like the other two, the gnome's dexterity doesn't live up to his charm, enraging the monstrous bartender. As intimidating as he may be, the monstrosity also is lacking in the dexterity department and keeps slipping over and over again on the ice patches that the sorcerers called down. Literally every time he tries to move, he just falls over again, and the party has no trouble tearing apart his health while he sits there impotently. Then after beating up a crazy dude and his poor bird, our heroes are set upon by Githyanki hunters. They couldn't have chosen a worse time for the heroes, since most of their spell slots were already used up in the last couple of fights, so I guess great timing ambush-wise, congrats to them. The sorcerers have mainly relied on the fact that everyone is stupid enough to stay grouped up instead of spreading out, but these Githyanki like to attack from every angle, making AoE attacks against them far less effective. Really, without all these healing potions and plenty of luck, the Githyanki attack would have succeeded, because even with those things, Gale and Karlach fell, Astarion was killed, and the gnome was barely holding on. With most things done, the team finally remembers that they're supposed to be at Moonrise Towers, where Ketheric and the Cult of the Absolute are lurking. With the tadpoles in their heads, it's no trouble to infiltrate the cult, but that doesn't stop our murderous adventurers from causing bloodshed anyway. First, by convincing brainwashed gnolls to devour their cultist master, but stay friendly to the party, then also convincing a group of novice cultists to walk into the shadows and be killed. From there, BG3 crept down to the prisons and discovered his old friends the Tieflings, plus some of his own race, a group of deep gnome rebels. Looking to spring them requires stealth and careful no. Why do I even bother hoping anymore? Of course the team just jumps the guards, murdering them all before they can sound the alarm. Somehow, despite their less than clever tactics, this does work, and all the prisoners are freed without alerting anyone. All that bloodshed was well worth the joy and the relief on the prisoners' faces though, right? And yeah, the gnome's only focused on his new outfit that he got as a reward and has already forgotten saving anyone, hasn't he? What else can we expect at this point? Returning to Moonrise, the heroes finally meet Ketheric as he demonstrates his immortality to a few goblins. BG3 really starts to wonder if he picked the wrong side, but as normal, his mind wanders 2 seconds later and he becomes focused on sitting in the man's throne. By the gods, Adventurer Chaos Gnome is scary enough, I do not want to imagine a Ruler Chaos Gnome. Thankfully, his mind wanders again and he focuses on resisting the impulse to fireball this room of cultists, despite everything in him screaming to. Just gotta be patient and listen to them long enough so he can get his shot at Ketheric. Time to grab Shadowheart and head into the Trials of Shar, her goddess, so they can find a way to remove Ketheric's invulnerability. The trials are not particularly hard, as the answers to each of the puzzles are usually in the same room. But that doesn't stop these adventurers from failing over and over again. Especially the Faith one, where they have to walk on invisible walkways over the endless void. That one, to no one's surprise, causes a total party kill as they keep falling to gravity's cruel ways. The answer to that puzzle is literally in the middle of the room on full display, yet they still failed to notice it the first time. When the cult inevitably loses to these idiots, I really do hope they understand just how stupid these heroes are, as that's gonna make the loss all the worse for them. They spend more time talking to rude rats than actually ever using their brains. The only puzzle that didn't bother the magic users was the puzzle meant to stump magic users. This device in the middle of the room would keep any magic from being used in the room, so the party simply activates their distant magic spells and destroys it from outside the room, completely negating the problem before it can even begin. Sometimes the one brain cell shared amongst all adventurers does actually make its way to this group, and it always surprises me when it does. The adventurers then come across a huge demon and his small army waiting to ambush any foolish travelers. So might as well strike first and unleash every bit of AoE ice, fog, fire, though that does nothing, and blades they can upon their enemies before they can even fight back. It is highly effective, and most of the foes are dead before they can do anything. Except when the gnome forgets that they're immune to fire, despite being shown that less than a minute before. As for the giant demon, he does prove more troublesome along with his aggressive kitty, but his main tactic of throwing down bombs doesn't prove very worrisome when the heroes can pick them up no problem before they can detonate. Theoretically anyway, as Shadowheart does get blown up by one, but by the time that happens, the fight's nearly over, so it's fine. Maybe not for Shadowheart's general mood, but still. After having a little chat with the king rat of the area, our heroes explore further using the power of super jumping. Fortunately, for my amusement, the gnome doesn't aim his jump very well, gets stuck on a wall, and plummets to his death. Sadly, the world needs that thing alive, so gotta bring it back and hope for the world's sake it gets better at defying gravity. This temple is creepy enough without running into one of the creepiest dudes ever. Though I suppose if you're gonna meet someone so grotesque, this would be the place to do it. But at least he's not outright hostile. He works for Ketheric and is here for the Night Song, the key to Ketheric's invulnerability, which the heroes are also here for, so might as well pretend to be friendly with each other. For 2 seconds anyway, before turning on each other as both sides vibe for the Night Song, which happens to be a woman, a celestial and mortal woman by the name of Aelin. The creepy man has a large host of undead on his side, while the sorcerers have what they always have on their side. A huge amount of AoE spells meant to demolish massive groups in short order, which of course means this is an easy win. The more crowded the room, the better in the sorcerer's playbook. Shadowheart resists her dark god's orders to slay Aelin, choosing to spare the celestial, which is great because these sorcerers can use all the help they can get, especially Aelin's angelic awesome anger. Joining with the Harpers and their leader Jaheira, invading Moonrise Towers is laughably easy, as once again, standing clumped together is the worst thing you can do with these sorcerers as they fill the rooms with every bit of damage possible. In no time, the party confronts Ketherick on the roof, and with Aylin's help, it only takes 2 turns to wipe out his undead forces and send him fleeing into the bowels of his castle. It's not exactly a pleasant place to be, but like anything unpleasant, you can always cover it completely with fire, and it becomes much, much more bearable that way. True to form, the combat is not what troubles the adventurers, but the puzzle made for children cost them over 15 minutes here. Sure, the fate of the world is hanging by a thin thread, and Ketherick might be escaping, but getting distracted by this random brain puzzle is definitely the best use of their time. Somehow, he's still not gone by the time our brain-dead heroes reach him, and after convincing Gale to resist the very understandable urge to nuke himself, Ketherick lets himself drop backwards into the green oozy hole behind him. The gnome can't help but hope that maybe they're actually getting lucky, and that this would be the end of it. But no, time to fight an avatar of the death god Merkel, which instead of being suitably terrified at that, the only thing going through the gnome's diminutive brain was what kind of name is Merkel for a death god? It sounds like Urkel and only conjures images of a little nerd and nothing scary at all. While the gnome stifles his laughter at Merkel's name, he loses nearly half his health in one strike from Merkel's minion, then watches as Karlach ends up casting a wall of fire both on herself and Gale, while trying to counterspell another minion, which nearly does cost Gale his life. Then 2 back-to-back wild surges blinds half the group and entangles Karlach, followed quickly by the gnome accidentally triggering an attack of opportunity from Merkel himself, leading to him falling, still snickering at the god's name all the way down. Astarion is able to get his gnome friend up just in time for both of them to go down together with another swing of the god's scythe. Somehow, despite all these setbacks, Aylin's valuable aid and Gale's plus Karlach's continued blast are just enough to defeat the death god. But Karlach has to do all the talking, as the gnome and Astarion are still struggling with little things, like breathing. But with this most unexpected victory, Aylin is made into a true ally against the rest of the Absolute Cult, Jaheira joins the group as a companion, the Shadowlands are going back to being called just lands now that the shadows are gone, the gnome gets a little haircut as he finally realized after a scythe to the stomach that the longer beard wasn't helping him, and well, Isabel is still in rough shape, but at least she's reunited with her love Aylind. The heroes press on towards the city of Baldur's Gate, no relation to the gnome, Baldur's Gate 3, but before they can make it there, they're waylaid by crazy ninja Githyanki. BG3 shouts about camp being off limits for combat, but they don't seem to care, and our heroes barely escape into the astral plane in time. After imbibing a couple healing potions, the fighting against the monks isn't too simple with how many attacks these rather skilled enemies unleash, but thankfully, magic missiles never miss, and the monks' numbers can be limited with a simple banishment spell. Victory means meeting the Emperor, the Mind Flayer who has been protecting the party the entire time from being transformed into Mind Flayers themselves by harnessing the power of Orpheus, a trapped Githyanki prince. He seeks their aid in stopping the Absolute, which is a Mind Flayer Elder Brain being controlled by the 2 other psychos besides Ketherick and Baldur's Gate. Which sounds great, but the Emperor also wants BG3 to become a full Mind Flayer and makes him ingest a tadpole against his will, saying he knows the gnome really wants it, despite the gnome trying his best not to take it. The consequences of shoving so many tadpoles in his brain has finally caught up to BG3, and he is not a fan. The new look does fit the gnome's personality better, if I do say so myself, only half transforming him, and while it does provide more powers to BG3, it also effectively adds the Emperor to his hit list for forcing this transformation on the gnome against his will. He can't kill him now, or it will destroy the party's protection from the Absolute, but the gnome is patient and will bide his time. As will we, as we say huzzah! After 19 hours, 36 minutes, Act 2 of Baldur's Gate 3 has been beaten by only Wild Magic Sorcerers. I thank you very much for continuing with me on this journey, and hope to see you for the finale of Act 3. As the heroes overcame the Shadowlands, I hope you too overcome your own shadows. Though not literally, like with Peter Pan and his shadow. Well, maybe if your shadow comes to life and rises up against you, then sure. Stay vigilant, friends. I'll see you later.